welcome back. All right now we're going to look at our objective for today is to compare integers with and without a number line. Using the number line, we can use this to help us compare, but we also want you to be able to do it without having to use a number line, being able to do it in your head and think about how it works. So here what you'll notice is I don't have definitions, but I've drawn you the number line and we just want to think about it. As I work my way towards the right, going this way, the pink arrow, what happens to my numbers as I go to the right? Well, what you'll notice is they're getting bigger. Now, this tends to throw kids off a little more when we look at the negative side because we're so used to positive numbers. We look at a number, 9 is bigger than 7. However, if you look down here, negative 7 is actually bigger than negative 9. So what you want to do when you see this, the easiest way I generally think of it, is I think of this as owing people money. None of us like to owe people money, right? So the less money you owe, the better. So would you rather owe your parents $7 or $9? You'd rather only owe them 7. So that's actually a bigger number than the other. We always want to have the bigger number when it comes to money, right? So again, if we're going to the right, they're getting bigger. So then obviously, the other way, heading towards the left, we'll notice that our numbers are getting smaller and smaller. This way we're used to seeing it. This is, again, the side that tends to confuse us a little more. The bigger the digit, the smaller the number when we're dealing with the negative side. The other thing I wanted to remind you, because we're going to be comparing numbers, when we compare, we use our greater than, equal to, or our less than signs. So we want to make sure that we remember those, and the way that I always remember how they should face, I draw them into a little Pac-Man. Remember, Pac-Man is hungry. He likes to eat the bigger number. 7 is bigger than 4. Or if we were reading this as a sentence, we would say 4 is less than 7. But remember, his mouth always opens towards the bigger side. So let's compare some of these numbers. And again, you can use a number line. I can draw one up here real quick for us to start with. So here I have a negative 7 or a 2. This is one that I would almost do without using the number line first, because if you can just think through it, it'll make sense. Would you rather owe somebody $7 or would you rather have $2 if you're owed? Well, personally, I'd like to have $2. So that's going to be the bigger one. Pac-Man wants to eat 2 things. He doesn't want to throw up 7, if you want to look at it that way. Sorry. So over here I have 2 negatives, and this is the one where I generally see some confusion happening. So let me just add a couple more numbers to my line here. Remember, the further to the right that it is, the bigger the number. So let's look at it. Negative 5 I have right here. Here is negative 5. Negative 9 is down here. Which one is further to the right? Negative 5, making negative 5 the larger number. All right? Remember, it's a smaller digit, but since we're dealing with negatives, that makes it a bigger number. Think about, would you rather owe somebody $5 or $9? All right, over here, what you'll notice, what we first have to do is we have to simplify this number. I have the opposite of negative 4. So what is the opposite of negative 4? We've done this before. Remember, 2 negatives form to combine and make a positive 4. So I have 4 on this side, I have 4 on this side. What is that? Well, those are actually the same, I'm just writing them different ways. And this is why we want to do this first. If you try to do it all in your head, it can get very confusing. So I like to write the numbers right above or below so that I don't get confused. All right, over here, 0 or negative 8. One rule to remember, negatives are always less than positives. Negatives are always less than 0. If you owe somebody money, it means you don't have any money. That's why you had to borrow it from them. So would you rather just have nothing, or would you rather owe somebody $8? Well, personally, I'd rather just have the empty pockets and not owe anybody money. So 0 is actually the bigger number. 0 is greater than negative 8. All right, here you'll notice, this goes back to yesterday's lesson, we have our absolute value signs. So what is the absolute value of negative 6, or how far from 0 is negative 6? It's 6 digits from 0. What is the absolute value of 4? 4. Now that I've rewritten my numbers, it's easier for me to see and to compare which one is greater. 6 or 4? Our positive numbers are easy to compare. You've been doing that. 6 is bigger. Over here, remember, I have the negative outside the absolute value. So I need to take my absolute value first and then make it negative. The absolute value of negative 3, how far is it from 0? 3 digits. Then take my negative, put it back with my answer. Here you'll notice the negative is inside. So I'm asking, what is the absolute value of negative 2? Well, the absolute value of negative 2 is 2. It's 2 digits from 0. So now what is bigger, negative 3 or positive 2? Positives are always bigger. I'd rather have money than to owe it. So that's the larger one. The other thing I'm going to ask you to do is order them. Instead of just comparing and saying, is one bigger than the other, now I want you to say, what do I have? Let's put them in order. From least to greatest. Here's the biggest thing I see on this, quizzes and tests. Make sure that you read the directions and you know which way I'm asking you to do it. Here I want to start with my smallest numbers and work my way to my biggest numbers. Well, if you'll recall, on this board I showed you, our negative numbers are smaller than our positive numbers. So basically when we're ordering these, I want my smaller numbers on this end, my larger numbers on the other. All right, we're just going to go over a few examples here with ordering our integers. And the few things that we want to remember is that positive numbers are always greater than negative numbers. 0 is always greater than negative numbers. You kind of need to flip your thinking when we're dealing with a negative number, so keep that in mind. So what I do here, first thing you want to look at is your directions. Here specifically, I'm asking you to put them in order from least, the smallest, to the greatest, the biggest. So you really need to pay attention to that. The greatest mistake I see on quizzes and tests is kids not reading the directions and putting them backwards. So pay attention to that. So least. So I want this least desirable amount. I think of it in terms of money. So obviously I don't want to owe people money. So I've got a negative 4 or a negative 19. Which one is the smaller value, or what is it that I don't want? Well, I don't want to owe somebody $19. I'd rather only owe $4. So negative 19 is my smallest, then negative 4, and I just cross them off as I go. Then from here, the last 3 are pretty easy. You've dealt with them before. 0, 12, and 22. The positive numbers you've done before, that's not too terribly difficult. So here you'll notice I have 3 negatives and a 0. Well, 0 is going to be the biggest number there because I'd rather have nothing than owe people money. So, sorry. Remember here, we need to reverse our thinking. If these were positive numbers, it would be 2, 3, 9. And you can even think of it that way and then reverse them in your head. Say if these were positive, it would be 2, 3, 9. Since they're negative, they need to go in the opposite order, which means negative 9 is the smallest, negative 3, negative 2, 0. And look at it and think of it in money. Would I rather owe 9, 3, $2, or owe nothing? Well, I'd rather have nothing, so that's the biggest value. So we always like to have the bigger value. All right, here the first thing we're going to do, this is not 151. This is not negative 151. This is the opposite of the absolute value of 5. So what I'm going to do is I'm first going to do that calculation and rewrite this without the absolute value sign so I know exactly what number I'm dealing with. The absolute value of 5 is 5. We add in our negative. So I have negative 5, negative 6, 11, and 0. So our smallest numbers are negative. Would I rather owe $5 or $6? I'd rather owe 5. So 6 is on the end, it's smallest, then negative 5. Then we have a 0 and an 11. Same thing here, you'll notice again I have an absolute value sign, so I'm going to do that first. The absolute value of negative 8 is 8, so I know what number I'm dealing with. I don't want to get confused. I want to know exactly what number it is. So again, I look for my negatives. I have a negative 12 or a negative 2. Which one's further left on the number line? Negative 12. Then negative 2. Then I have an 8. And I have a 14. So you just have to remember that whenever you're dealing with negatives, you kind of just have to flip the way you're thinking. It's always kind of backwards or the opposite of our positive numbers. If you have any questions, post them in the comments or ask in class. You can always email me or feel free to rewatch the video if you need to. I'll see you guys later. Have a good night.